Hey guys, welcome back. If you're new to this channel, this is my project. It's a 2010 Camaro SS L99 converted to an LS3. Uh, it's got a BTR Stage 2 cam. It's got a Whipple supercharger, long tube headers, a bunch of other things. Check the channel out. I have this car from beginning to end with a parts list, and I tried to give as much detail as I can on how to get to this point. So my next step before I get it tuned, it just has a startup tune in it now. So my next step is to bring it to Genetti Racing and have them actually dyno tune it and street tune the transmission. It's an automatic. But before I do that, I have to upgrade the fuel system. So Genetti spec this ZL1 fuel pump, and then also a JMS voltage booster, which I'll have part of this video. So it works off throttle response. The more throttle you give it, the higher it's gonna boost the voltage. I'll look at the instructions again. I believe it's like 12 volts, and it's a 0 to 5 input from the pedals. At 5 volt input, it'll put out 18 volts, I believe, but I'll double check that. So what I got going on is I'm not gonna drop the tank. I think it's crazy to drop the whole cradle, exhaust cradle, to get to the fuel pump. A lot of the import cars have these hatches in the back seat. You can see I pulled that plug and I just took a pair of tin snips. I was just curious how thin it is. It's actually, I don't want to say super thin, but it's thin enough where you can cut it with just a pair of tin snips. But I don't want to hack it. I do want to make a nice hatch for it where it's going to seal any exhaust fumes and be accessible after. So right now I'm trying to make a template. So what I did was I had some hose clamps left over from cold air intake. I bought a cold air inductions intake, which I'm going to paint black. But this came with hose clamps, so I took the hose clamps off my old cold air intake, doubled them up. That's what this is right here. And I'm just using this as a template. So I adjusted it so it will fit around the fuel pump. So I know if I trace this out, I can get the other fuel pump out. So I'll use this to basically as a template, just so I can have a good cut line. All right, so this is how I marked it out, right or wrong. So because I cut that one slit and I pulled this grommet back, I was able to put my fingers underneath and try to feel where the fuel pump module is. And then I'm just taking my best guess. I put the hose clamp like that. And then, yeah, I'm going to cut that out, see what happens. It's not do or die. I mean, I'm going to make an access panel for this anyway. It's probably not even going to be round. Probably just going to use a aluminum square and put in some rivet nuts to bolt it down with some weather stripping. But I'm going to keep this like this. I'll cut this circle out and see what it looks like. All right, so I got this opened up, and as you can see, it's not perfectly round. I had to open it up because, like I said before, I was just guessing. I had nothing to work off of. But hopefully this will help some people now that you have a reference. So I got a tape right here. So from the center of that grommet to the center of the pump is 5.5 inches. And from the center of the pump to the edge of the fuel pump module, or even this retaining ring, is 4 inches. So 5.5 this way, 4 inches this way. So you're talking about 8-inch diameter hole you want to make. So I would just do the 5.5 to here, and then the 4 inches from here to get your center, and then just do 4 inches out all the way around. I'll give you an 8-inch diameter hole. Just so you have a better reference. So now that I have this opened up, I blew all this area out with compressed air. So when I open up this retaining ring and I take the fuel pump module out, a bunch of debris doesn't fall inside the tank. And I also vacuumed up the whole area, get it as clean as I can. So I'm going to knock this retaining ring, take off this connector, and this fuel pump connector, this blue clip. You want to pry up on that tab on the top and at the bottom at the same time and slide that guy over, and then you can release this. All right, so I got the connectors off, put the fuel line, electrical connector, and I got this ring off. Something to think of when you go to knock it to make it easier. There's actually a little bump right here. In the beginning, I just put a screwdriver right here, and I kept knocking it on this side. Then I hit it on this side. Just kind of kept walking it, so it's putting some down pressure and knocking it over until I got it to finally move. And then I started using these edges, and it came right off. All right, so it's pretty straightforward. The one interesting thing is my tank was pretty much empty. I put less than 10 gallons in it, and it still overflowed, and it looks chock full. So I don't know if this side's a hair lower than the other side or not. I'm not really sure. Maybe if you guys know, just let me know in the comments. So this is the one line that hooks up to the bottom of the tank for the suction side. You just push these two tabs in, and it pulls right out. And then you got to put it on an angle and really swing it to get the float out. I'll show you the float. So here's the float. This is how the pump came out. Here's your suction side of your pump. You can see how far that float sticks out. So when you want to tip it to one end, I don't want to tip it too much, pour fuel all over the bench here, but you get the idea. You want to tip it enough to be able to get that float out without bending that rod. And another thing is, if you notice, the other one doesn't have the float, so it doesn't have the module. See how this one connector? And if you look at this guy, it has two connectors. So what you do is, I already pushed the tab, but just to show you, you unplug this connector that's closest to you. Get the wires out of the retainers on both sides. And then you push these two tabs in, and then you can lift this whole module right out with the connector. And then I'll just reverse the process on the ZL1 pump. I'll drop that in and then hook up that connector. It's almost impossible with one hand, but you get the idea. So the factory sending unit out of the other pump snapped right in, no issue. It's all the same. The only thing I noticed is there's only a retainer on for the blue wire. There isn't one for the white for whatever reason, and the connector plugged right in. So I'm just going to reverse the process and get this all back together and fire it up, make sure it runs. I have no issues, and then I'll tackle the JMS voltage booster. I like to not make too many moves at once if I don't have to. So if I have an issue, it's easy to troubleshoot. I know the car ran before I pulled that pump out. I drop this in. If it still runs, then I'll continue on. But if I did, say, the fuel pump and the voltage booster at the same time, and I had an issue, then I'd be questioning both. So it's just how I do it. So I reversed the process, installed the pump, hooked up the connectors. Obviously, you gotta make sure you hook up the supply line to the bottom of the fuel pump. Drop the tank in. You're gonna put it in on that angle, like I said before, with the float. Get the retaining ring on, and then hook up your electrical connection and your fuel pump, your fuel supply to your rail. The one thing that's interesting, this is not like an old school retaining ring. If you've ever done one of those where you just use a cold chisel and a hammer, you knock it off and you knock it back on. So I was able to get it off that way, but getting it back on, if you look, you have it's kind of like a little ramp. See that angle? So you start over here with the retaining ring, and then you start sliding it this way. The problem is it gets so tight that when you get right before where it is right now, right when you get before this ramp, it's extremely tight to go that little bit. So I spent probably 20 minutes trying to hammer it, pry it every which way, but I could not get it to where it is right now over that last detent. So I ended up looking up tools. There's a lot of good tools out there. On the way home today, I went to O'Reilly's, picked this guy up. It's a universal tool. As you can see, it had two posts on each side. I had to cut one off to get it to go into this retaining ring. Like I said, it's universal. So this was the part number W80668. It worked. It got the job done. Do I recommend it for this application, for this GM retaining ring? No. I would order the proper tool, one piece. They're solid. This one's a little shaky at best, and there's so much tension that I had this with a breaker bar and a cheetah bar pipe on the breaker bar, and I really felt like the tool was about to snap right when I heard a pop, and that was the retaining ring seating itself. So I did get it done. It did work with that tool, but if you're not as impatient as me and wanting to get it done the same day and you can wait a day for the tool, I'd get the right tool. So the next step is I'm going to fire it up, make sure it still runs. If that's good, I know that system's all set. Then I'm going to work on the JMS voltage booster. I'll get that installed again. When I'm done with that, fire it up, make sure we're good. And then at that point, I'll make a panel for this, get this sealed back up, and then contact Genetti to get this thing dyno tuned, and this project's rounding third base. So I'm working on the fuel pump control module, the JMS voltage booster. So in order to do this, you got to take your rear seat out, which is pretty easy. It flips forward, and when you have it flipped forward, you'll see this little latch in the back. You push that latch back, and there'll be a post coming out with a flat on it, and then you push that so you have the seat folded down. You push that back, you get it on that flat, and then pull up. It'll pop right out. Same thing on both sides. And then to get this rear interior sail panel off, you're going to take off the sill plates. These pop straight up. You can see all those ovals. That's where the push clips go into. So you pop the sill plate straight up. You can take that out. The one that connects to the back, like on the driver's side here, see that hole in the plastic on the top? There's a peg on that sill plate. So that's got to come up at the same time you're prying out the bottom where that square is. So you want to get both sill plates out because you're going to be running the cable to the gas pedal on the driver's side. But on the passenger side, you have to actually take out this whole interior panel to get to the fuel pump control module. So that's disconnected, and it calls for the instructions to find the red and white tracer wire, which is this one right here, red with the white. So you clip that, and then the red wire from the JMS module goes to the wire not still connected to the connector, so that's the one going right to the fuel pump. And then the white one goes to the end that's left on the connector. So it comes with the butt connectors, which I'm not a huge fan of butt connectors. I'd rather solder it, but I'm just curious with the heat, if that's why they're calling for the butt connector. So I use them, and they're shrink wrapped too. On this guy going to the fuel pump, I actually wrapped it with a second layer of shrink wrap tubing. So now I'm gonna connect that. And what I also did was I did the wiring first, and I had the actual JMS box that's now mounted. I had that just laying on the trunk just to make sure I had enough wires. So I butt connected the wires, and then tried to figure out where I was going to mount the actual box. And there was plenty of room to put it right here, right in the side of the speaker on the passenger side. It catches 3 of the 4 holes. One hole's kind of out there, so it's only got 3 self-tappers holding it, but it's on there. It's definitely not coming off. And the black ground wire, I'm gonna zip tie along with the factory harness all the way down to that ground right there. So I'll have that follow the harness all the way down, and then I'm gonna do the same thing here. I'm gonna zip tie. I'll clean all these up and I'll zip tie them to the factory harness going all the way back to the box. So this is the inside, the fuel pump control module. I got that all snapped back in, and that's the cable and all cleaned up going to the back of the trunk. So we got the trunk view. Here's the box mounted. I did power it up just to make sure everything was good. The power and the ground are complete. You can see I just tucked all the cable in from the inside. I wire tied it to the main harness, and then I wire tied the feeders together. The ground wire I ran same thing with the body harness all the way down to the ground right there by the fuse block. So that's all set. The next thing I'm doing is, let me zoom out here, is I'm running the gas pedal harness. That's this guy right here. Same thing, that'll get all tied nice and neat to the body harness. I ran it through that little window right there, down on the inside of the car, underneath that carpet for the trunk, that little flap there. You can see I ran it down on the floor alongside the that interior panel, that side panel, and then down to the sill. So it kicks up by that kick panel right there, underneath the carpet, all the way along the sill, underneath that kick panel. I was able to just pull it back enough to get the harness underneath this kick panel without removing the entire kick panel, and then now it's up under the dash. So the next thing I got to do, which I don't know if I'll be able to get this on the camera, is hook up this T-connector. So this just goes in between the gas pedal OEM harness that's there now, so that you can have this one wire right here, which is your this is your feed back to the JMS from your pedal. So it's a 0 to 5 volt input, and that's going to get that signal from your gas pedal. All right, so I got the box mounted. I got all the wiring cleaned up back here. I just wanted to show, instead of mounting this unit down in that well and then covering it up and it building up all kinds of heat inside there, this is definitely a better spot for it. So I bought this kit from Genetti, and the instructions call for it to be mounted here, but I just wanted to show you guys what it looks like. So I did clean up this harness. It's behind the panel. I zip tied it to the body harness wiring, like I said before. But what I wanted to show was, if I can, the lighting's kind of throwing this thing off, but how clean it looks. You don't see any of the wiring harness. It's very easy to get to the dip switches and to adjust your input and output. You can see the LED's on now. It is powered up. I've already test ran it. And what you do is when I get this unit powered up, that gray and black wire that's down by the gas pedal that doesn't get connected, because you use that T-harness connector. I'll show you over here. These two guys, the gray and the black, you power it up and you touch these together. I used alligator clips to hold it together, and that's basically simulating your wide open throttle. So it's going to show you your maximum output, how this box is set up. So what you do is with those wires together, you come to your output over here and you adjust your output. This has a Z01 fuel pump in it. So Genetti calls for 17.3 to 17.37 volts maximum output. So those wires are alligator clipped together. Maximum output, it was showing 18 volts. I dialed it down to what Genetti spec'd, 17.3. I think I ended up at 17.33. So I left that there on the output. I disconnected the black and gray wires. Then I had somebody give me a hand. They jumped in the car and put the gas pedal to about 50%. And at 50%, now you're adjusting the input. So I just tweaked the input down until I saw it was at about 14.5 volts. The second those moved, started to increase, I stopped right there. Had them take the foot off the gas. I put the dip switch. The whole time you're doing this, you're in configure mode, which is the dip switch number 1 is on. So I had that on. I flicked that to off, and then to test it, turn the car back on, and then as you have your meter hooked up to the white wire coming out of the JMS that's going to your fuel pump, you watch the voltage. So as it went to about half throttle, a little bit past, the voltage started increasing, and at full throttle, it hit that 17.33. So it's pretty easy to set up. If you buy this through Genetti, and the instructions he gives you is very clear. It's pretty straightforward. So I'm happy with it. So I'm just gonna finish up getting this all back together. I'm going to get the driver's side sill plate done, all the wiring underneath the dash, get that all zip tied, nice and secure. These wires, I'm actually gonna probably put shrink tubing on the ends of them and shrink wrap them so they don't ground themselves and go to maximum output. I'll get this sill plate in, and then I still gotta finish this panel for the fuel pump. All right, so that's a wrap with the JMS wiring. All the wiring's done. I've got all the trim panels back in, sill plates, passenger driver's side. I have the all the wiring tucked underneath the dash and wire tied. I also did put shrink wrap tubing on the those terminals for the black and gray wire. If you don't, and that ends up grounded, if those wires ground themselves, the JMS is going to go straight to 18 volts. So you'll be running the max output all the time, which you don't want to do. So this repair panel, I ended up using just 22 gauge steel. I was able to form it to the shape of the floor. I hit it with some zinc primer just so it doesn't rust. So I drilled these 4 holes where I knew I would catch the floor of the car. And then I mocked them, removed it, and then I put a thick steel plate underneath every hole I had to drill so I wouldn't pop a hole through the tank. There's a lot of spots where this tank's very close to the floor, and you don't want to vent it. There'll be gas everywhere because this side of the tank's actually a little lower than this side, so it'll be leaking all the time. So that's a wrap for the fuel system. I'm going to move on to the next video. Will be cleaning up the front end of the car and getting the bumper cover on. But it's mechanically, the car's ready for the dyno. I reached out to Janetti, today's a Sunday, to get some dyno time. But that'll be the next video. That's the end of this one.
If these videos help you and you like them, please make sure to like and subscribe. Bye!